Chief Paul Cook, President of the OACP, I understand that the chiefs are meeting here in the great city of Sudbury, having board meetings and discussing a lot of important issues. One of the big issues that affects police services and communities across the province is the future of policing. Chief, can you tell us a little bit about what's going on there?
Yeah, Joe, as you're aware, the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police called upon government to establish a process that would provide a clear direction for the future of policing. So that resulted in the formation of 4 working groups with an overarching body called the Future of Policing Advisory Committee. So we have a number of stakeholders and policing partners that for over a year now have had meetings to discuss the future of policing in Ontario. We believe that this has got to be a holistic approach. Certainly from a police leader's perspective, we certainly endorse looking for efficiencies and investigating ways that we can be more effective in our policing service model, but we're not willing to do that to sacrifice either officer safety or community safety. So I think that's important, because I think the economics of policing is driving some of the partners at that table and some of the discussion. And again, we're looking at a more holistic approach, and we want to see a strategic document come out of this that's very visionary, not a series of short-term fixes that won't assist with the sustainability of our profession.
Well, one of the big issues, of course, when you're talking about policing and responding to community needs, of course, is the use of force that police officers are given. And we've heard a lot of discussion, public discussion lately, about use of force options and expanded use of force options. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we've had a number of high-profile incidents, best described as tragedies, recently. And I think it's important to note that whenever this occurs, it's in our DNA to grieve. And these are tragic situations for the families involved, as well as the communities and the officers that are sworn to serve and protect. And certainly none of our people go to work expecting this worst case scenario. So, let me start off by saying that we do feel for the families in these incidents. And, as police leaders, it's incumbent on us to ensure that we maintain public trust. Certainly public trust and confidence is integral to us being able to serve the public. So when we have these types of issues, we come together, grieve with the families. We certainly do a review of the particular incident. In this particular case in Toronto, there's an independent body, of course, the Special Investigations Unit that carries out the criminal investigation, and then the Toronto Police Service do an independent investigation under the Police Service Act to make sure that the officers acted accordingly in those situations. So it's always a difficult issue for us to deal with, but I know that we were very excited recently when Minister Mayer invited us to join her as we spoke to the ministry's position on the expanded use of conducted energy weapons. And this is a good news story for policing and a good news story for community safety. So at this point we're waiting to see what the ministry guidelines will look like, but we are anxious to move forward and having conducted energy weapons and the authority to carry them expanded to frontline officers, because as you're aware, the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police, along with others, including the associations, have advocated with government for some time now to expand the use of conducted energy weapons. And there's been a number of coroner's inquest juries, either directly recommend the expanded use of CEWs or at least that it be investigated. So ourselves and other policing partners have been working with the ministry to examine this and investigate it further, and that's really what led to the announcement earlier this month.
The conducted energy weapons are often referred to as less lethal options. What does that mean?
Well, they're on the same scale right now as your ASP baton and your OC spray. And I think it's important to note that although they're referred to as less lethal force options, anytime we use force, there's risk associated to that. In the worst case scenario, risk of death, but risk of injury. What we're advocating for is the ability for a frontline officer, depending on the circumstances that are presented to him and her, to have an option where they can resolve the situation safely for the officer and for the individual involved. And I think the end goal is always for everybody to go home safely.
Mm-hmm. Well, and of course, when we're talking about expanded use of force options, there's always the issues of costs, of course. And in terms of the cost of policing, we've heard a lot about policing being an expensive public service and the need to be efficient and effective. Can you talk a little bit about how the board is looking at those issues?
Yeah, we're obviously looking for best practices as we move forward, and this entire FPAC process, that's part of what we're trying to do is look for long-term solutions. But again, I think it's really important to stress, although we continue to look for those efficiencies and to better serve the public, it's not just about the cost of policing. And we heard the term in Winnipeg, the cost of not policing, and I think that's important to put that on everybody's radar. The people of Ontario expect and deserve a professional police service, whether that's a municipal police service, the Ontario Provincial Police, our counterparts with the RCMP or First Nations policing. Expectations are very high, and certainly in my 9 years as chief in North Bay, I've seen a real increase in the calls for service related to things like dealing with mental health issues or dealing with marginalized people, people that have addiction and substance abuse issues, and that's really causing a lot of challenges for police services. I would estimate that 80% of what we do now really has nothing to do with anything criminal. So part of the discussion taking place at the FPAC table is what is core policing and what's non-core. And I think the important piece of that is if we determine that police aren't going to respond to certain calls for service, then government has to step up and fund and support the ministries and agencies that do. And mental health is a classic example, because really in policing we've become the safety net. When things go wrong, people pick up the phone and call 911 24/7, 365 days a year. We respond. So if we're going to step back from some of those responsibilities that have kind of been downloaded onto policing, we better ensure that we're supporting those that are going to provide those.
And what about the costings that are going on in communities across the province?
Yeah, and this has caused some divisiveness across the province. I think as an overarching statement, it's fair to say that every community deserves a high level of professional policing. It comes down to those communities to determine who provides those levels of policing. As you're aware, there's a process guidebook that was written, and the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police took a part in putting that guidebook together. At this point, it hasn't been adopted by the Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services. They haven't endorsed that, and I think that's disappointing because I think that guidebook, when you get into these costing issues, people are looking for consistency, and processes should be consistent and transparent, and I think that it would behoove the citizens of Ontario to have the ministry endorse the guidebook. So there's really some rules in place, as municipalities struggle with those very difficult decisions as to who provides policing to their communities.
And finally, Chief, I know the OACP board continues to deal with issues of suspended without pay. It's a concern to a lot of people, including citizens out there. What is that all about?
Well, right now the Police Service Act, which governs policing in the province of Ontario, makes it very clear that when an officer is suspended, he or she is suspended with pay. And going back to 2007, when the OACP passed a resolution specific to the ability of a chief of police to suspend without pay in a given set of circumstances. And we realized that The intent of the legislation was to protect our officers when they're involved in on-duty incidents that might result in criminal charges, whether that be a police-related shooting or a traffic tragedy associated to perhaps going to a call for service or a high-speed pursuit. The challenge we have now is with the current legislation, we have officers that are involved in egregious off-duty conduct that results in criminal charges, and we're really hearing about that from the public. A boxcar figure for a first-class constable is now about $82,000, and when your community hears that you have an officer that's charged with a very serious criminal offense that really has nothing to do with his or her duties as a police officer, and they continue to be paid, especially in light of the economics of policing, and when we're looking for efficiencies, you have boards and members of council and members of your community asking, how does this happen? How do we have legislation that allows for these officers to continue to be paid? It's a huge burden on police budgets. The other issue that shouldn't be lost in this is, as I said earlier, the key to policing is public trust and confidence. And so when we have our officers charged, these are very high-profile incidents in the community. They make the front page of the paper anytime they go to court, and it really takes away from the outstanding work that the vast majority of police officers do day to day across Ontario. So you've got two different things going on there. One is the pressures financially, and the other is the erosion of public trust and confidence. So we are meeting with the associations at this point to see if we can find some middle ground that would make sense to both the association and police management. As police leaders, certainly we have no difficulty in holding our members to account. That's a big part of the role of chief of police, is to ensure that discipline is maintained. And again, I think for even our associations, they're feeling the pressures from the community specific to members that are continuing to be paid for acts and inappropriate behavior that have nothing to do with their role as police officers that results in criminal charges.
Chief, a lot of issues obviously that the board is dealing with here in September 2013 in the great city of Sudbury. Thank you for your time. If you want to connect with the OACP, visit our website www.oacp.ca. Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Joe.